pleasure today to have this guest with us on the Power Transformation Podcast. And what makes it special for me is I have known her for a couple of years now because I used her company's services, and to get to know her outside of that business world is such a joy. She is certainly a light in human form, and I'm so happy to have Porschia Parker. See, look, I said prior to us starting, y'all, that I would not mess up her name. I got tongue-tied. I know her. This is Porschia Parker-Griffin. I am not going to edit this out,
No,
but I got tongue-tied. Girl, you know I know who you are. Porschia Parker-Griffin. I said Portia, and I'm like, what in the world? But
no.
anyway, girl, I'm so happy to have you. Welcome to the Power Transformation Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the kind words, Alethea. And my name is a tongue twister. Actually, my initials were Triple P before I got married. So Portia Patrice Parker, and my mom was a
Oh my
teacher.
gosh.
So she did the alliteration. So I know it's kind of tongue twisty and all that.
No, it's fine. I said, oh my goodness. I said, look at me. Y'all, prior to us starting, I had this whole spiel saying her name and indicating the importance of it. And this is a person that I actually know. So anyway, Portia, I'm so glad to have you here. And I always like to start with a nice, lighthearted icebreaker question. And so my question for you, Portia, is thinking about when you were a child and your upbringing and in your childhood, what was one of the favorite things that you like to do with your friends outside of school, but just as fun? What did you like to do with your friends?
So I played basketball, Alethea. I
Oh,
started playing basketball in third grade and played up through most or halfway of high school.
mhm.
So I, enjoyed doing other things, but I think my dad was such a big basketball guy. Like he had us all in basketball. So for me, if I wasn't, at school or reading because I'm a nerd too, I was playing basketball and watching the NBA finals and excited when they started the WNBA because I was in middle school or high school when they started that. So you probably would have caught me working on my shots.
Wow. Wow. That's really great. So, did you ever consider, or were you ever possibly offered a partial or even maybe a full scholarship to play basketball in college or in the university level?
No, I think I quit before then.
Oh, okay.
10th grade. And part of my rationale for stopping was one, I took a look at the wages that the WNBA players were making. And at that time, it was $33,000.
Oh.
And I said, I don't, I love basketball, but it's so much on your body. I had started having knee problems and
Mm,
other issues in high school, right? And so
wow.
then I said, okay, and the average WNBA player only makes $33,000. I'm already having knee issues. And the varsity coach, she wasn't too keen on people taking like AP classes, advanced placement
Oh,
classes. So it
yeah.
was like, you've got to dedicate your life to basketball, and we want you taking what some people perceived as easier classes. And so I
Mhm.
was getting ready to go into AP classes in my 11th grade year. And, I said, I want to focus on getting an academic scholarship. So I quit playing, I think, before they really start, offering you um, uh scholarships. And it's funny because some of the guys that I used to play with, they're like, man, you definitely could have gone to like at least a D3 school or a D2 school and played. But I'm a little short for it now. I'm 5'8", so the short end of tall. But
Uh-huh.
most of the ladies are a bit taller than me now. So
Exactly. Wow. I really appreciate you telling us that. And I also am 5'8", and it's taller for a woman, but short on the taller end. But
yeah,
people who are less than 5'8" are like, what are you talking about? You're
yeah,
tall. But
exactly.
but but I really appreciate that because thinking about how you were so well rounded with athletics and then also academics and even more makes me think about things that you've done throughout your life career wise. And we'll touch a little bit about that. But first, I want to pose this question to you. If someone were to come up to you and say that they had heard something about a person's name called Porschia Parker-Griffin, and they came to you and said, "Hey, what can you tell me about her? Who is Porschia Parker-Griffin?" What would you say?
Ooh, this is a great question. It's a deep question. There's a lot of ways I could answer it, but
There are, yeah.
uh, in short, I would say they would probably say Portia Parker Griffin is a thoughtful person. She is a wife, a daughter, a sister, and a friend. Um, and Portia has a strong vision and
Mm,
wants to help other people tap into that vision for themselves.
mm. What does vision mean to you? Not necessarily what your personal vision is, but when you think of the word vision, Portia, what comes to your mind?
Ooh, so much.
Mm,
I think vision is creating a picture um, of what you want. And we have to be very careful with the visions that we speak and we think,
mhm.
because I do think that, negative thoughts and saying negative things can impact that vision of what you create. But I think the simplest way to put it is I think a vision is a picture, and it's usually a future picture of something, right? So,
Okay.
with our clients, a lot of it is around their career and, their life. But you could have a vision for anything.
Yes. And so, with that being said, that's a nice segue into, although we'll talk more about your transformational journey, share with us a little bit about exactly what you do and who you serve professionally.
So I am founder and CEO of Fly High Coaching. So vision, as you can tell, is a word that I really like just based on that business name. But we offer career and business services for seasoned executives, ambitious professionals, and what I call brave entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
We help them to create and execute their strategies while moving through that mental resistance that shows up. I think what's interesting about us is that I've been in business for over 10 years. It's going to be 12 at this point. So before coaching was cool,
Uh-huh, exactly.
common, really doing this work. We've helped thousands of clients at this point on their career journeys. I think our kind of core areas of focus are supporting individuals to land their dream job, get noticed for that next promotion, and develop their leadership skills.
And what sparked your interest in that? Did you wake up one day and said, "I want to help people with their careers or to set up"? How in the world does a person go into that type of calling?
Oh, yeah. So great question. I have an undergraduate degree in psychology.
Mm,
So I knew that I wanted to help people. And from what I could see, I said, okay, well, psychology. And then I thought I wanted to be a counseling psychologist. But in college, I saw a lot of the clinical aspects of psychology. And I said, I don't really want to focus so much on past traumas and all of those things.
mm.
So I just got a job and said, I'm going to figure this out. And after working in the consulting world, I felt called to, change careers and start my own business. And I thought, really, someone's career, you're never taught or told how to navigate it. It's something that you're just kind of
Mhm.
thrown into, right? And figure it out. And, you might hear other people's opinions about what you should be doing, right? You might fall into doing things that work because you're the best person to do it. or the most capable person in their eyes, but it might be draining, right? So there's so many ways that your career can go off course, and nobody's taught this. They
Mm.
don't teach it in college, they don't teach it in high school. And so that really was probably what motivated me to focus on careers and the different detours. And you know what? Thanks for saying that, Alethea. I thought of something else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if you remember these, but the Choose Your Own Adventure books from like
I do. I remember those.
the Choose Your Own Adventure books. Okay. And so I started to see that like your career is like the Choose Your Own Adventure book, right? You could go this way, you could go that way. And, to have that career that you want and that outcome that you want, helping people do that just seemed really cool. I know that was a long answer.
No, but it makes sense. And that's something that I never considered. And maybe people would have a fresh look at their professions or their businesses if you viewed it like that. I think a lot of high schoolers or college graduates would be a little more excited about entering that job force if it were coined as choose your own adventure. I think it could really make a world of difference, even on a person's mindset, because I never considered it that way. Or even when I was growing up, I loved the game of life. Haven't played it in years, but I love the game of life because there were so many different adventures you could have in your life. It was reality things. You
Mhm.
may have gotten penalties or had to pay taxes on something, but it
Yes.
did get you to view life a particular way. And then also choose your own adventure and the game of life can also show the unpredictability of what can happen in life. Because even if you choose your own adventure, there's still things that you have to experience that you may not have seen coming. And sometimes they're not always the best things, but yet they take us to that next level that we're supposed to be in. And Portia, for you, being in this particular company that you own for 12 years and so much more. For people listening, they can hear you peppy, upbeat, people that see you, see this beautiful woman who just has a presence about her. But sometimes things aren't always as they appear. And so a person could see you and say, wow, she's got a thriving business. She looks great. She said she's a wife and she's this and that. She has it made. But Portia, talk to us a bit about what maybe one or two of the most challenging periods of your life have been, even when navigating your own business.
Well, I appreciate that acknowledgement, Alethea, because as you know, as a business owner, um, you are staying the course and
Hmm.
making that conscious decision every day. I was talking to a prospect. Well, actually, she's a past client, and about 25% of our clients are entrepreneurial. So we've worked
Okay.
before on her career, and now she's started a business. And she asked me a similar question. She said, Portia, did you ever like wonder if you could do it or wonder if you should go back and get a job? And I said, yes. And that's a normal and natural thought. I have had challenges along the way. And I do think sometimes people, um, if they don't see a challenge, they assume that you don't have any.
Uh-huh.
And, we were talking, previously, but most people are going through something.
Hmm.
I've had a few, and I think the top two that I'll say is, working through burnout at, a few key points in my career, and then also health challenges. I have a chronic illness, and I don't think I've ever talked about this, Alethea, on any
Wow.
other podcast. I have endometriosis, and that is another challenge that I've worked with my almost my whole life. Um,
Mhm. So let me quickly just jump in here. Endometriosis is something that I'm going to just take a leap and assume that a lot of people have heard of, But when they hear that, they may not know exactly what it is. So, could you give us a brief layman's term definition of exactly what it is and how it has affected aspects of your life?
Absolutely. So you're right. Now, and really since I would say the year 2000, they've been talking more about endometriosis. Um, Often, the perception is that endometriosis is a gynecological disease of bad periods, and
Hmm.
people just assume this lady has a bad period, she's in some pain, and that's it. And it's not quite that at all. And research has shown now that it's actually not even just a gynecological disease. It's actually a whole body inflammatory disease
Mm.
that you are born with. And it is triggered um, for most ladies once they start menstruating. So once they start getting menstrual periods, their hormones and particularly estrogen goes up and it starts stimulating this endometriosis tissue, which is
Mm.
basically extra tissue that is growing in places where it shouldn't be. And people with endometriosis, and they're doing a lot of research around it, but for some reason their bodies are not removing the tissue properly. And so what
Oh.
happens is it just grows and it builds up and it gets stimulated every cycle with estrogen and it becomes inflammatory. So, in short, or not so
Hmm.
short, that is a high level overview of endometriosis.
Wow. And so, or from what you're saying, then, is it safe to assume, or am I incorrect, that once a person hits menopause and stops menstruating, then that means that it goes away completely?
If only that were true. So, no,
Mm.
what happens is, and this is kind of unfortunate. Yes, in the past, they would say, well, the cure is to just get a hysterectomy. And so they gave a lot of ladies with painful periods, fibroids as well, just hysterectomies. And they said, well, this solves it. There's another condition called adenomyosis, which is similar. And, with fibroids and adenomyosis, removing the uterus can quote unquote cure that. Or menopause can, for some ladies, quote unquote, cure that. But with endometriosis, that is not the case because the
Mm.
tissue is one, not just around your uterus. For most ladies, you can have it like I did on my bladder, on my bowels,
Oh my gosh.
other ligaments. Yes. So it's not just your uterus, but also to make it even more intense, endometriosis lesions can produce their own estrogen. So, unfortunately, with endometriosis, a lot of ladies get surgery and then they get multiple surgeries, or they have a hysterectomy and they say, well, why am I still hurting? It's because a lot of times they still have endometriosis lesions that were not removed and they're producing their own estrogen, which is causing the inflammation and the cycle of pain.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So, thank you for that. Those details, they're necessary because, I am a person that while I've had my own share of health challenges, that's one area in terms of reproduction or even endometriosis I haven't experienced, and no one in my very close, well, I know people who are diagnosed with it. So I'm not going to sit here and act like I don't, but I'm talking about in terms of my immediate family, no one that I'm aware of has it, or they may not even talk about it. But thinking about you navigating entrepreneurship, having your own personal life, take us back to when you were first diagnosed. Tell us what those emotions felt like and seemed like, and what was your initial thought in terms of what you needed to do next in order to treat it?
Great point. So, one thing I want to share based on what you said is that they estimate that 1 in 10 women in the world have endometriosis. So,
Wow, that's a lot.
it is. And so, I've just recently started sharing with some people about it. This is, like I said, the first time publicly, but everyone who I've shared it with, to your point, with your experience, knows someone, a sister, a cousin, a
Mhm.
aunt, a friend, a coworker who has endometriosis. So it is prevalent to a degree out there. And when it comes to a diagnosis of endometriosis and how I navigated that, they say that the only true way, the gold standard is what they call it, of diagnosing and treating endo is to have a laparoscopy, which is an abdominal surgery where they go in and look at your uterus
Mhm.
and other areas of your pelvis. So that brings me to another point is that in the US, they say on average it can take 7 to 8 years to diagnose a woman with endometriosis. And unfortunately, that's the case because there's a lot of gaslighting that a lot of women go through. So imagine if you say, "Oh, I have pain." Well, your friends without endometriosis say, "Hey, I have pain too, and I took a Tylenol," right? So then
Mhm.
you are wondering because you're not in anyone else's body. I was wondering, and I had this experience, well, everyone says they have pain and I'm having pain. So I guess I should just be taking a leave in Tylenol. So I did that. I didn't realize that what I was experiencing was not normal until I got to college. So my mother and my sister do not have endometriosis, but my sister said, "Hey, sometimes I don't feel well and I take a leave or Tylenol." So um, I was, I had a lot of the negative symptoms, fatigue, vomiting, um, diarrhea. You just have a flare, and everyone's flare can be a little different. But for me, you're out for the count, right? you can't
Mhm.
you can't even stand up a lot of times. And this is a flare that happens every month with your cycle, and then it takes days to try to recover from this flare.
Wow.
So for me, it's 5 to 7 days of being, not myself. So again, I started realizing this isn't normal in college. And so when I graduated from college, I moved to Los Angeles. And when I got my first kind of big girl job for a consulting firm, I went to a gynecologist. And I'm a nerd, Alethea, that I've told you. And I just went online and I went to town with the research.
Wow.
And I found out about this thing called endometriosis. And when I read all of the symptoms the most common symptoms, I had every single one. And I wanted to cry because not only is it just pain, but there are digestive symptoms. There can be, back pain, joint issues. Some ladies have infertility, a lot do.
Mm.
I said, "Oh my gosh, I have endometriosis." So I'm 23 at this point. And I went to my gynecologist and I said, "I think I have endometriosis." And I listed off all my symptoms. And she said, "You know what? I think that you probably do." But she said, "The only way to confirm that is to have surgery." And she said,
Oh.
"If we had the surgery and confirmed it, my solution for you would be the same. I would tell you to get on this birth control." So that's what I did at 23. And a lot of ladies with endometriosis get on birth control and they get on it a lot of times even earlier than 23. But birth control is not a cure. It for some ladies suppresses the symptoms, and for other ladies, they can't tolerate it at all. For me, it's
I was about to ask you that. Would the birth control possibly suppress symptoms? So that's what it does.
yes, it doesn't
Mm.
stop it from growing, but I mean, without getting too technical with hormones,
Yeah.
we say that it can suppress symptoms for some ladies. So for me, I was fortunate in that it did suppress my symptoms. So that was kind of my first conversation with a doctor
Mhm.
about it at 23. So I was on birth control for over a decade. I had some other health challenges that I now think were endometriosis related. But fast forward to last year, I said, "You know what? I really want to focus on my health, healing this endometriosis and figure it out." And, by this point in time, I had gone through bouts of burnout, had started a business, gotten a master's degree, gotten married, so really for me, having the symptoms suppressed during that whole time of where we're doing our career and business thing was important.
Yeah.
So honestly, that if I didn't, I would not have been able to probably
Wow.
business, to be honest with you, because it is debilitating. But
And really quickly, if I can jump in, although it's not well, it seems to have a lot of symptoms of autoimmune illnesses as well. But is it classified as such or not quite yet?
good point. Some people considered endometriosis to be an autoimmune condition,
Hmm.
but it's not. It's generally deemed an inflammatory disease with an autoimmune component, and there is
Okay.
are immune issues. And they find a lot of comorbidities or coexisting conditions with autoimmune conditions and endometriosis. So allergies, eczema, arthritis, um, mast cell activation syndrome, something called POTS. A lot of other autoimmune conditions um, are more common in ladies with endometriosis.
Oh, I see. I see. So this is a lot in terms of the information that you research, things that your doctor shared, and yet you're still trying to navigate and you're a young woman when all of these diagnoses, like a really young woman just starting her life, when all of these diagnoses are given, and how do you handle that? How in the world were you able to process what was going on while still at the time working a full-time job? But then, even with that diagnosis, you later decided to start your own company. Portia, take us there and how you decided to not use your health as a crutch to stop you from living a thriving life.
Ooh, great question. Well, one,
Mhm.
I will say that I was on the birth control, which was suppressing some of it. So I do know that that was helpful for me. But at 25, I went to the doctor. And so this is my general practitioner.
Mhm.
And you get your blood work done, saw the doctor, left. And then they called me back. And then they said, you've got to come back to the office. There was a lot of issues with my blood work that I now know are common with endometriosis. I didn't know that at the time. But she told me that I needed to quit my job just based on my blood work. She said
What?
stress was too high. She said my brain was going to be affected. I had a lot of vitamin deficiencies. She didn't use the term adrenals, but now that I know what I know that my adrenals were off. But what was funny is that I was sitting in her office, Alethea, and I thought, you know what? I'm not going to be hearing this next year. A year from now, I'm not going to be hearing this same conversation. I
Hmm.
had already gotten my coaching certification and gotten a few clients, but I still had a full-time job. So I was one of those where I worked for about a year and a half, while I had started the business before going full-time into the business.
Hmm.
Really, that was motivation for me because I said, you know what, if I'm going to be having the stress that I had because I was in sales for this consulting firm, I'm going to have the stress that I have. I'm going to do it for myself and I'm going to sell something that is meaningful and changes people's lives and doesn't just make executives rich.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I really used that pivotal moment at the doctor's office the second time to say, really light that fire because I had already, was going to do it and certified. But yeah, that was a motivator for me
Mm.
very strongly.
Wow. So with that motivation, how did you depend on and I use depend not as a crutch, but how important rather was it for you to utilize your support system through all of this?
Yeah, it was important. The thing is that for me at the time, I didn't have a strong support system because I had moved across the country. So
Oh, I see. And you're from where originally? I've
So I
forgotten.
kind of lived everywhere.
Yeah.
I lived everywhere, but grew up mostly in the Metro Atlanta area.
That's right. Okay.
High
Hmm.
school, middle school and high school in the Metro Atlanta area, and then I went to the University of Georgia.
Hmm.
And then 2 months after graduation, I moved to Los Angeles by myself. Didn't have a job, no roommate, no boyfriend, nothing. So
That's what you do in your 20s, girl.
yes.
Yeah, we make some choices.
Exactly. So I will say that my support system in LA was not super strong at all. I really called and talked to my mom mostly about, what I was going through at that time. I will say that something I got from my parents, both of them, was really to be um, disciplined and uh resilient. And I mean, my dad's phrase when I was a kid, he would always say, make it happen. So the good in that is that I can, motivate myself and stay the course. the negative part of that I'm sure you've talked to a lot of your clients about and high achievers, I can burn out. I can, uh,
Mhm.
that workaholic tendency, I can fall into that pattern very easily.
Wow. And so, in order to navigate this, let's fast forward to the fact you're in your business, and I know that you said that they put you on birth control. You were on birth control. You use the term in past tense. So does that mean that you're no longer on it? Did they change up your treatments? Take us there in terms of how you were able to be weaned off of birth control and what you do now to manage your symptoms.
Yes. So, last year, I went off of the birth control with the goal of kind of healing, figuring things out, right? Because
Okay.
what was what. So I tried a lot of natural things before I got surgery because I'm one of those people where, as you can tell, I do a lot of research and I found
Hmm.
a lot of natural treatments. So I started an anti-inflammatory diet, no gluten, no dairy, low sugar, those sorts of things. Started taking a lot more specific supplements for, antioxidants and inflammation. I
Hmm.
started getting acupuncture. I tried to start reducing my stress, which I think I've been better at this year. And so to see if those things would help, and they did help quite a bit. But the endometriosis was very intense after, over a decade of it being suppressed.
Hmm.
And so I made that decision to get surgery earlier this year.
Okay.
So I got the surgery, and it was a very much harder recovery than I thought, but also, I debated on it. And I, tried all the natural things and was still in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in that surgery, I found out that I have stage 4 endometriosis, which is the most severe stage.
Mm.
It was on other organs, not just kind of in the reproductive area. I had small fibroids removed, and then also an appendectomy, so my appendix removed, because
Oh.
endometriosis can grow on your appendix. So it can really just kind of spread and grow. So I had that surgery done earlier this year to kind of get a fresh start and manage from here.
And while you talk about it with such grace and strength and dignity, as a woman, that is a very difficult decision to make from people that I know who have had them, whether they've had children or not. That can be a very difficult choice. Talk to us briefly about how you learned to almost, in a way, grieve that part of you and then finding healing in the midst of it.
Yeah. So I think that for me, it was allowing myself to sit in it. So,
Mm.
Olivia, and I'm sure that you've kind of seen this with what you do and some of your clients, but I realized that the way that I deal with anxiety or uncertainty is to intellectualize it. So I go into research
Mhm.
mode. I'm
Mhm.
not that type of person generally who sits, for a long period of time and um, just kind of um, deals with sadness or negativity that way. I'm like, productivity Portia, like, what can we
Yeah.
learn? What can we
Mhm.
research? But I realized
Mhm.
that's actually a response to anxiety as well. And so just understanding that was one thing. And so for me, it's in all really aspects of my life with endometriosis, burnout, it's about me doing less and not doing
Yeah.
more. Um, I've talked to some ladies that have other autoimmune conditions and ladies with endometriosis, and it is a common thought for ladies to feel like their body is betraying them, right?
Mm.
There's nothing that you do that causes the endometriosis. They've done research on this and found endometriosis in stillborn fetuses, right? So,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
and it's in about 10% of stillborn female
Oh,
fetuses.
wow.
So it's not something that you can kind of connect to you doing something to cause it. Um, so for me, it's about slowing down, doing less, resting when I'm tired, and taking things off of my plate. So that's how I've how I've had to work through it.
And earlier you mentioned vision. What is your vision for the future of endometriosis as a condition? How do you envision that in terms of, say, hopefully in the next even decade? What vision do you have for it?
Oh, great question. So when I first started trying to work through it last year, I was like, there's no information on this. And because I went back to when I was 23 trying to find information.
Mhm.
But I see now that there are many podcasts of ladies talking about endometriosis. There are studies
Really?
now. Yeah, none of this existed, when I was
Yeah.
23 trying to learn about it. So that's one thing. And there's more of a light and research being done. So I'm participating in a research study right now, where they are looking at the blood of ladies with endo and they're trying to find markers so that they can diagnose it without having to have surgery. Um, so I just I would love for people to put the resources and the funding behind endometriosis
Uh-huh.
research so that ladies don't have to suffer the way that I have. And even to that point, I have gratitude because throughout this last 6 months or so, I've learned about family members that had endometriosis, and I had no idea.
Really? See, it's not talked about.
It's not talked about, and
Wow.
they didn't have and I said to, my grandmother didn't have the internet and all of this to try to figure out these healthy changes that she could make. Aunts didn't have this information. So while it is understudied, and it has been underfunded, I feel like those of us today, we have so much access to just even information, that we can use. So my vision is for them to put the funding behind it. And there's a whole sidebar about funding women's issues.
Hmm.
They don't get the same funding as men's issues or issues of both genders. Um, and I would hope that those things change.
Hmm. And you have really carried this, as I said, with so much grace. How has resiliency played a part in this health journey that you've experienced? And what I mean by that is just not simply bouncing back, but what I mean is bouncing beyond where you could ever imagine, taking your life to new heights and new levels, flying high in multiple aspects of your life. How has your health journey contributed to that?
Ooh. In so many ways. I think,
Mhm.
at first, Alethea, I thought about it like I tend to. It's my default to think about everything. I plan, and then I'm like, oh, this isn't going to be bad. I thought my recovery was going to be a 3-step process. A lot of times they say, oh, women, it's 2 to 4 week recovery.
Uh-huh.
My recovery was a 10-step process and really more of a 3-month recovery than 2 weeks. So, in that time, being kind to myself, and uh, nurturing myself, just things like eating, sleeping, going to the restroom. I mean, stuff that you take for granted, walking up and down stairs. My husband was having to carry me up and down the stairs because I
Mhm.
couldn't do it based on where all the surgery I had. So, um, gratitude in that recovery process, and then to think about it moving forward. Um, for me, I realized that resilience can be in small steps, and it
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily, because I'm that got to leap to the end and, like you said, bouncing back and doing all that, but not being a ping pong ball to it,
Uh-huh.
but um uh showing up, and maybe today resilience looks different than it did yesterday.
Yeah. And not to go too far into the deep end with this question, but it makes me wonder about women who are married, or in committed relationships. What role does how can a woman and her significant other, how can they still create moments of intimacy even in the midst of this? And using that word intimacy, not necessarily, of course, thinking about intercourse, because it's far more than that, but just the fact you said about your husband taking you upstairs. People might not view that in a way, but that's a form of intimacy,
Mhm.
because not all, I have a great man, you have a wonderful husband, but you know, not everybody would do that. But even something like that is wow. He loved you enough to say, look, she needs some help here. Let me carry her upstairs. So if a woman's listening to this who's experiencing it, or even a man listening and his wife is diagnosed with it, what could you say could be some of the most simple yet appreciated forms of intimacy that a couple can have during this time?
Oh, you are spot on. I told my sister-in-law that honestly, I think that post-surgery, this is the most thoughtful and deep, and to use that term
Mhm.
intimacy, my husband has been. Like, I think
Wow.
really seeing me in the condition that I was in
Hmm.
snapped him into another
That's
uh,
beautiful.
yeah, another phase. So he's been great.
Mhm.
I think it's the small things, right? Because um, you know, after pelvic and abdominal surgery, even the other part of intimacy is out the
Mhm.
window
Yes.
quite a while. But just holding your hand and um, asking how you're doing and really asking how you're doing. I think also that anticipation. So thinking ahead of what someone might need and how you can help, all
Hmm.
of that, I think really grows that bond and that connection. Uh,
Hmm.
and I will tell you this, our relationship changed after my surgery and my recovery, and I see it in my husband.
Wow, that is wonderful. And hopefully somebody listening or watching this can say, "Hey, this gives me some hope." And sometimes when it comes to either side of the coin, but especially with men, sometimes they don't know. And we've got to be direct and just tell them, look, this is what I need. And then that's what will happen. And I know that this particular interview wasn't focused on your business, but I do want to give just a bit of time before we close out. Share again some of the services that you offer and how a person can connect with you, because y'all, Portia's business is virtual. So you don't have to be in the same town as her to get services done. So just take a bit of time and then we'll close out with just a couple of more questions. Go ahead.
Thank you, Alethea. So as you mentioned, we are a virtual business. I say we offer career and business services, and it's even more than coaching. So as Alethea knows, we have a team of professional resume writers. And what I learned with starting with career coaching, Alethea, is that you can have a great strategy for someone in their career, specifically their job search. And if they don't have the right tool, their resume,
Hmm.
all of that is not going to work. So we added on resume writing, and in that we also have a LinkedIn makeover service because LinkedIn is so important nowadays as part of your what I like to call customized job search strategy. So we have professional writers on the team, and then we also have coaches. So we even have a membership called the Brave Bird Career Alliance where I have put what used to be 3 to 6 month coaching programs that I did one-on-one into courses so that you can have 24/7 access to any aspect of your career growth, development, and change. So we have stuff in there about landing your dream job, career exploration, figuring out what you want to be when you grow up, getting promotions and leadership. And then we even have an entrepreneurial course as well. So we have courses. And then because we found that some people just wanted the information and then the monthly Q&A call with me. And then some people wanted the coaching on top of that. So we have, some tiers of our membership have the membership access and the coaching. So all of that just really to help clients to achieve their vision. And something else when we talk about vision, because that I think has been a good kind of central theme of this show, one of our core values is positivity. And every team member that starts working with us, I talk about positivity because I've seen this with so many clients, and I'm sure you have too. You might be the only positive person in their life that believes they can do what they want to do, right? So in our case, sometimes we're the only people that believe that they can get this new dream job, or we're the only people who believe that they can get that promotion or become a VP or start that business on the side. And so I take that very seriously. Friends, family members, coworkers, they may love you, they may not, right? But a lot of times they're biased. They see you in a certain way. And so we hold that space for you with your own vision.
And how can someone contact you if they would like to know more about you and hire you for help?
Yeah. So I am most active on LinkedIn. So if you are a social media person, come check me out on LinkedIn, and it's just my name. And then also our website, and that's FLY -high coaching.com. And like Alethea, we have a podcast called the Career 101 Podcast. So check that out. And Alethea was kind enough to be a guest, and her show is going to be airing later this summer. So
Thank
those are the
you.
ways.
Yes, thank you so much. And I'll have all of those links posted in the show notes. And as we come to a close, Portia, what would you say to a woman right now who's experiencing endometriosis and perhaps may need a bit of extra encouragement and support? What would you say directly to her?
Cool. Well, I would say to her that you are not your chronic illness, which is hard. And I even had to have that reframe because I would say my endometriosis, but I realized that the power in that statement. So I think the first thing is that you are not that diagnosis.
Mhm.
And that there's so much support out there. There are Facebook support groups. There are podcasts out there. There are communities out there. And when I realized I had it, I didn't know anyone else with endometriosis. Nothing was told to me about my grandmother or my aunts. I just didn't know. So find that support.
And for our closing question, Portia, what have you learned the most about yourself on this health journey?
I think that I have learned that I am resilient, and I know resilience is your
Mm.
thing.
It's
But
our thing, girl.
yeah,
It's our thing. Go ahead.
because, the thing with endometriosis, and I have other family members that have chronic illnesses where they have a flare, a few times a year. The part of the issue with endometriosis is it is cyclical in nature. It's, you're having a flare every single month. And it can take you out for a week, or some ladies, it's the whole month.
My
So
goodness.
that repetition is what is also debilitating for a lot of ladies. And there's a larger instance of depression and anxiety because it's like, if this thing is coming every single month. So when I say resilience, it's that you can know it's coming, and plan for what you can plan for, and accept what you can accept and move through that to get to the other side and not just stay in that kind of like impending doom kind of place.
Wow. This has been quite powerful. And Portia, I hope and pray nothing but the best for you on your continued journey. There was so much that we didn't even cover, but I think that what you shared was perfect in and of itself. And thank you for just being a light and showing that transformation can still occur in your life, even if you're still experiencing a challenge or an obstacle, but it's how you navigate it. Because sometimes people think, oh, overcoming a challenge means that that particular problem no longer exists. It could be something that's there, but how you navigate it is quite more powerful. And you definitely exude that. And I thank you sincerely for being a guest on the Power Transformation Podcast. It has been my pleasure.
Well, thank you, Alethea. And I want to say thank you for creating this safe space, not only for me, but for all of your guests.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Power Transformation Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow or subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. It helps us inspire even more listeners. And don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who could use a little power in their transformation. Until next time, keep bouncing back, keep rising, and be good to yourself and to others.